morning all. When I put my first draft of this presentation together, and then I put in my bio at the beginning, and this immediate question jumped out at me. Actually, does my personal experiences in the industry, does it actually reflect the challenges and the issues actually facing the industry as a whole? Rather than actually going into the details. When I first joined the industry in the 1990s, so I'm in my early 20s, I actually worked for several shipping companies in the new build sections, working in various different ship types. For those of you who've actually read Martin Stopford's books on ship market cycles, you'll see that he actually went to, I managed to move in the up cycles in each time, so I carried on getting promoted each place. And with only 10 years experience, I've managed to go from a technical assistant, assistant superintendent, superintendent, to actually being project lead for new building. Now, is that actually unusual for this industry in such a short amount of experience to end up quite a high place? But that does actually pose a lot of issues. And so the question I was then asking, how do those opportunities come about? And I suppose one of them is actually just the organic growth of the industry itself. If you're talking in terms of tonnage, I know earlier Carl was talking about number of ships. In terms of tonnage, in that decade, the world tonnage doubled. So that naturally means there has to be more and more people coming into the industry. And has that actually dumbed down some of the skill sets? Hence my promotion, worked for me. And the other side is also, in that time, is the industry itself, or the world economy in itself has actually moved from west to east. So actually a lot of people in the west, that skill set's been lost if they've gone to the Far East, or if you take the UK itself in the 1980s, wasn't a bright decade for the UK shipping industry. And much experience and knowledge was actually left in there, which again left a great opportunity for me. So actually being in new building is actually quite straightforward criteria, well-trodden path on what you actually have to do, that select the right equipment, the right materials, make sure the hull's built correctly, and the machinery systems are fitted correctly. Then you need to make sure it's sort of fit for purpose. Is it built to the contract specification? And does it meet regulatory compliance? Now, on both of those, I say, does it meet? That means I'm not talking about best practice, it only actually has to meet. And of course, any commercial thing has to be delivered on time and in budget. So when I actually left the new build section and joined the P&I club in loss prevention in 2005, I was actually feeling quite confident. I knew a lot about ships. I had a little bit of a rude awakening though, that actually, whilst I knew a lot about ships, I then suddenly had to look at the holistic approach of shipping. And of course, if you look at shipping, it's made up of many elements. Of course, there's the physical part of the ship, the mechanical parts, the equipment. But also, we've got to look at sort of people and processes and procedures, and sort of things that people have talked about today. And there's sort of the classic Venn diagram of the three things. Now, I've actually added a fourth element to this. I couldn't think of a better generic term for cyber, but you probably all know what I actually mean about the latest technology and actually computers coming in, and the digital age is actually there to help us, and more automation has been brought in. We could talk about ECDIS as being a key part of automation, or we could talk about unmanned machinery spaces. But whilst each one of those items can be easily looked after in sort of quantitative rules and regulations, it's when you actually put them together and it's the interaction between them all. We have issues, and that's where we see most of our claims and most of the accidents and incidents of this sort of integration. And the way this is actually managed is in a totally different way. It's managed more in a qualitative approach, bringing in the human element. And that sort of neatly brings me on to what this talk's going to be about. So I'm going to open up Panos's request that can I actually give a very brief overview of P&I and what is P&I insurance. So apologies to VJ, who also works in the industry, that I'm going to give 175 years experience in a couple of slides. Then we're going to look on sort of some claims metrics, which sort of shows the issues of claims and the human element in that. And I'm going to look at human behaviours, which is sort of looking more to the practical approach. And I felt quite embarrassed now, having followed two university academics who've given the theory of humans, and I'm going to look at some of the problems we're actually seeing. So, what is insurance? Now, it actually depends on the ship owner's appetite to risk. So if a ship owner is very adverse to risk, he's going to buy a whole raft of different insurances, which you can buy in the Lloyd's markets and the open markets. This is only some of them, and certainly not an exhaustive list. But there are actually two main types of insurance. The first insurance is your first party insurance. This is sort of the physical entity of the ship, and it's appropriately called the hull and the machinery, because that is what it's covering, the physical ship. It's actually quite defined in what it covers, and from an insurance aspect, it's actually quite a defined financial cost. You know how much that ship will cost if it goes wrong. Ultimately, if it's a total constructive loss, or you know how much the machinery is going to cost, etc. But with this being very defined, it's actually quite easy to buy this insurance package as a fixed premium in the markets for a single ship or for a fleet of ships. But wrapped around that is actually third-party liability insurance. Now this is called protection indemnity insurance. Now this is actually quite vague of how far it actually covers, and no sort of defined boundaries as such. And because of that, it's very hard to actually put a financial cost on how much that insurance is going to be. So an individual ship owner finds that quite difficult to be able to buy enough insurance to cover his financial obligations should something go wrong. So ship owners have clubbed together, joined together, and they set up a form of mutual clubs. Now there are 13 mutual P&I clubs that make up the international group. So you've got VJ, the steamship, and myself at Standard Club. Now each of the clubs, they all offer very, very similar insurance policies and at very similar prices. And the reasons why those 13 clubs are actually managed by an international group secretariat based in London, and they make sure that there's actually fair competition between them all. So we've got no one club is sort of financing the bad underwriting of another club, because they may be putting very or less onerous terms on it and leaving them very exposed. Now these 13 clubs, we make up about 90% of the world's tonnage insured, so we are quite large in that aspect. And put together, we're able to buy reinsurance packages in the market, and I think we reinsure up to over $3 billion worth of insurance. That's quite a lot of money if things go wrong. So in sum, what is sort of P&I insurance? It is a mutuals made up of a group of ship owners. So the ship owners, both the insured and the insured, they share a common risk. They own ships and they're transporting cargo from port A to port B. The club itself, a P&I club itself, it protects the member from third-party claims or third-party liability costs, and also indemnifies the member for any of these losses. P&I insurance, the main headline for it is sort of 7 items, which are people, cargo whilst it's on board, care of cargo whilst it's on board the ship, pollution, collision, not just with ships, but also fixed and floating objects, wreck removal, and fines. Fines could be something like the repatriation of stowaways. So if you start looking at some metrics on that, and this is the Standard Club over a 5-year period of 2004 to 18, you can actually see that 75% of our claims actually falls between cargo damage and personal injury. But I've highlighted two there in particular. One is collision and one is wreck removal. Because whilst we're looking at number of claims, if you actually look at the value of claims, a wreck removal only counts 0.1%, but it's quite a high percentage. If you've gone back a few years earlier, but back to 2012, you put in the cost of Concordia, that would be even more. Changed the curve, but fortunately that's written out a little bit now. But that sort of value of curves. And if you do a study into types of claims, and you can dice it any way, but we've sort of worked out about 60% of our claims we say is down to human error, and another 19% is down to personal injury, so that's about 80%. Now, other industries, I actually noticed that Steffi used this particular one as well in one of her slides, using Allianz's figures. They came up and they said actually 75% of claims come around from human error. And then another source as well, this is the EMSA, the European Maritime Agency. They looked at claims, okay, they're putting the numbers well from percentages, but it's showing very much the same figure, that if you look at the yellow line under the human element and human actions, that is the most dominant reason for why we get claims. But also what's interesting on this particular slide is it not only shows ship, which is in yellow, but it's also showing the shore management in grey. And again, the most dominant cause of failure is again human element and shore management. So I think my iceberg's better than yours. So what do we say about claims? The Standard Club last year had a quick look at our files. We opened up around about 2,500 file claims. Now probably about 20% of those aren't actually claims, they're just open files and being closed. So it's probably about 2,000 claims came through, which is around about a quarter of our ships, so 1 in 4 ships, you could say, you have on risk have had a claim. Or 3 out of 16 ships have actually had a claim down to human element. And if you want to put a financial cost on that, it's in excess of $300 million worth of claims we paid out last year. Now all of these occurred on ships that have approved safety management systems which have been in place, could be for 20 odd years. So something's going on there. And of course we can put a monetary value on things, because that's only the tip of the iceberg. Because the other things to issue are this, the loss of life. And we also have a moral obligation here on the latter part. How do we actually protect seafarers? Or as a broker actually put it to me, how do you actually protect seafarers from yourselves? Which is probably a better analogy of what it is. Now there's a whole wealth of knowledge and experience and expertise in the public domain about human element. And if you actually look at one of the objectives of this forum, is actually to look at sort of mitigating risks around poor safety culture. So the next few slides, I'm actually going to look at sort of seafarer well-being. Again, very much touched on the 2 previous presentations, and I'll be sort of combining the physical, the mental, and the social aspects together of well-being. Now, some seafarers are affected by poor health, and there are shown that medical issues and fitness can actually affect the seafarer in his decision making, or actually in his actions. Now, the Standard Club, prior to setting up a pre-employment medical examination scheme in 2015, spent 5 years studying personal illness claims. And that's really was the outcome of why we set up this PE in 2015. We set them up in, I think, 6 different countries, but it is actually dominated by the Philippines. So 40% of our results back so far actually are from Filipino crews. And what we actually found that 35% of the seafarers passing through the scheme were showing symptoms of diabetes or kidney problems, hypertension, obesity, heart conditions. And actually 5% of them in such poor physical condition we were unable to sort of pass them through that. But the others are actually showing symptoms of this. They can actually manage it, but it's something to be aware. Now the scheme was never set up to try and stop people going to sea. It was actually supposed to be there to perhaps give advice and forewarning to seafarers that they need to look after their personal health. So if you actually look at the common problems such as diabetes, hypertension and obesity, and what was actually interesting also in our studies when we split them up, we actually found that in all sections of people over the age of 45, so I'll read a bit here, showing much greater obesity than people who are younger. Now was part of that down to the fact that perhaps the more senior officers, so that the master or the chief engineer would actually be of the over 45, and they probably had a job that was more office-based, more managerial-based, and sort of less or more sedentary than the more junior ranks who are running around the ships. But what can be done on that? I mean, yes, the seafarer individually has to take his own responsibility and look after his health and do a certain amount of exercises, etc. But as a shipping company, a ship owner, and also for the industry, they need to provide the tools for that person. Can they provide a gymnasium on board? Can they make sure that right food has been on board? They have dietitians actually looking at what they're going to produce, so they're getting the right amount of food, the right amount of portions of food, and a balanced diet fills everything they need. And the other side to look at is the mental aspects of it, and perhaps one of the most worrying sides of that, actually the biggest cause of death according to one of the mental health institutions is actually suicide on board ships, which I find quite astounding, but it's very high. But I think the key point to take away from this particular slide is, many seafarers do actually suffer mental health issues of some form. And mental health does actually reduce the capability and capacity of a seafarer to operate effectively and make informed decisions. So again, what could be there? I'm not going to go through all these because having got two professionals sitting in the room here, I feel a little bit embarrassed. But if you look at sort of the main issues of anxiety or stress or depression, and all these are going to affect that. And then again, also touched on again in other presentations, has been looking at sort of the form of social media, and actually this is causing a big issue on board ships as well. Social media ultimately is very good. There are lots and lots of positives coming out of that. But there's the negative side to it. There always seems to be a dark side of the web somewhere. But the dark side is actually making people more and more withdrawn, more and more less social. They're going back to their cabins, going straight onto the internet, connecting to home. And then actually can feel very isolated. They can be told a problem that's happening at home, or resist the fear of missing out that my children always talk about. But it does cause problems. And another thing, when I first joined the industry in the early 90s, drinking was permitted on most ships. And you'd go to the mess room and there would be a bar and people would actually talk to each other. You go on board ships today, and of course they're alcohol free. But are they? I'm now seeing a lot of shipping companies are beginning to introduce the bar back again, and you can have a couple of drinks. Obviously, certainly you're not allowed to do it when you port or within 24 hours of port, but if you're in deep sea ocean voyages, they can do that. And another one I'm actually seeing a lot on board ships is actually they're changing the mess rooms more into sort of a coffee shop type environment, an internet cafe, to actually make people stay in one place. So although yes, they can log on individually, they're actually sharing their details. Well, not so much sharing their details, but they're actually in a social environment, which does seem to work. And the ships I've been on, I've actually seen that. It is actually used. It's not one person in there, they're always 3 or 4 people. So there is that sort of camaraderie, even though they're sort of wrapped up in their own little world, they're not completely isolated. And then there's another study that's come out, a whole load of social factors. Again, you talk about well-being, and some of these have already been touched on. But it is always an interesting one. Why do people go to sea? They went to sea to go and see the world. But actually what happens, see now on ships, spend the majority of the time at sea, very short amount of time in port, and the port is normally a long way from the town or anything of interest. So they don't get to any shore leave or any time to see that. And then we've touched on fatigue being an issue, that it's all very well sort of having your 8-hour, 4 on, 4 off watches, and making sure you get enough sleep. But in practice, yes, they show me the books all beautifully made up, and I've gone forward and do surveys, and everybody's stuck to exactly those. No, in reality, that's not happening. But it's this, is it the peer pressure, the macho pressure, that they can't fill these books in correctly, saying it's a problem? So I suppose the key point out of this is it's good to talk, and we've gone back to the cold face, the actual seafarers, they do need to talk to people. Now, I've given a bit of an example and sort of moving on to resilience. I think most people know what stress is, but resilience is actually your ability to be able to deal with stress. Now that varies individually with each person, and it's quite interesting sort of developing your fatigue model would actually, to me, the next step would be looking at resilience. So if you take a sort of working example, if you've got a seafarer who's fit and healthy both mentally and physically, then he should be able to concentrate and have an alertness. And he'll be able to then have that ability to recall his training if something goes wrong. So he's put under pressure. Let's take an example here, that the steering gear has failed. He's got to now think about how can he solve that. There's been some active issues. So because he's physically fit, he was able to get down to the steering gear very, very quickly. So you do that. And then he's able to actually think logically and work through the different modes of how it works. So another interesting graph also came up, is actually showing the differences between stress and resilience. And the key takeaway from that, as this graph clearly shows, when people are put under undue stress, their resilience to deal with that situation is inhibited immensely. And then hopefully after a while they're able to balance that. But you do see quite a big drop in that initial bit of people's decision making. So is that fault of people's decision making, going back to the earlier slides, are showing why do we have X amount of claims down to human error? So what can we conclude? Actually, what we're seeing from our studies, whether it be through our PMIF, our survey programs, and actually just reading a vast amount of information in the public domain, there is a general negative trend in seafarer well-being. Seafarers, to be able to operate effectively, they need to be mentally and physically fit. And it's a responsibility of ship owners to ensure that they provide the environment in which they can actually work, so they can work effectively. So it is in the interest, not just in I've put members there, I should have put ship owners, but ship owners have this interest. If they can get their seafarers in a good state of well-being, and it's not just the ship owners, perhaps it needs to be led for people here in the room and the industry itself, pushing for this uplift, then it's in everybody's interest to actually improve safety. Now the safety management system is very prescriptive, and to some extent you can actually buy an ISM system off the internet, put it in, so does it actually fit what's there? But a good safety management ought to actually integrate other aspects going on and acknowledge seafarer well-being and his resilience. Will he be able to perform that task? He may have the best procedures in the world, but if that seafarer cannot perform that task, then what's the point of that procedure? And then a little bit of a sales pitch at the end, and very fortunately Holly has brought in the book, so actually one of the books we work with. As here, she'll sell it to you. It's a human element. We've been working with various partners in developing that, and then we also have, you can print free off our web page, and tacky copy here of our wellbeing guide as well. I don't think there's anything amazing in there you didn't know, but sometimes it's actually good to put it all together so people are aware of it, and some simple fixes. Thank you very much.